the King's Online Academy. Hey, Mr. Bartz here, and I want to share just a quick word of encouragement with you. I'm thinking back to a time when I had a friend who had a storage unit, and he was looking to move out, and so he needed some help. And so he texted me and said, hey, can you help me move out all my stuff out of the storage unit? Now, you know that if you get a text from a friend asking you to move them, that's like the ultimate test of friendship. And so I, willingly said yes and went over, and as we opened up this storage unit, we slowly began to realize that a lovely family of rats had made their way into his storage unit and really made it their home, which what it looks like, for the last several months, they had made it their home. And so every time we pulled out a piece of furniture, we would see remains or evidence of this family of rats. And just so happened that when we were moving him out, they had just had a whole another group of babies. And so we worked it out with the storage unit. It was not a pleasant experience, to say the least. It was supposed to take a couple hours, and it took almost the whole day because we had to clean stuff off, and it was a whole thing. But I think about storage units because we see them all over the place. I mean, you're driving on the highway, you're driving around town, you'll see big storage units everywhere. Actually, I looked up some statistics. The storage unit industry in the United States is a $38 billion industry. Storage units alone take up 2.3 billion square feet in the United States. That is enough square footage for every single American to have at least 7 square feet to themselves. To say the least, storage units are everywhere. And I think it's indicative really of how we, as human beings, are inclined to gather, to store, and to consume. We like our things, even if we hardly ever use them. The funny thing about storage units is that you hardly ever really probably visit it, or you might not even know what's in it if you do own one. And yet we continue to clutter and to consume all the things that we can get without ever really considering, what am I giving out instead? I heard an interview a while back from the famous oil tycoon Rockefeller, and if you've been to New York City at all, you probably know that name and seen his buildings around. But the interviewer asked him, after he had made billions and billions of dollars, they said, how much more money do you need in order to feel comfortable, in order to feel successful? And his answer was, just a little bit more. And I think that, if we're honest, could be the posture of our hearts oftentimes. Maybe it's about money. Maybe it's about approval from others. Maybe it's about our value that we get from other people. Maybe it's about the things that we can acquire, our possessions. Just a little bit more. Just a little bit more. There's a sociologist that says that Christianity is not getting taken over by atheism, but rather by shopping. And maybe you think that that's dramatic or far-stretched, but I think that there's something to that oftentimes we're not necessarily really, against Christianity because of its claims or because it's hard to believe, but really maybe we're just distracted by other things. That we've found other gods elsewhere, that we can find our value, we can find our worth in what we own and in what other people can give to us. But Jesus speaks to this many times in the Bible, but I want to share just one with you, and it comes from the Sermon on the Mount. It's a famous sermon that Jesus gives in the beginning of Matthew's Gospel. Jesus is talking about how to live a wise and a God-honoring life. And he says this in chapter 6, verse 19. He says, "Don't store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys and where thieves don't break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eye is healthy, your whole body will be healthy. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. So if the light within you is darkness, how deep is that darkness? No one," Jesus says, "can serve two masters, since either he will hate one and love the other, or he will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money." It's a stern word from Jesus to us. And I think oftentimes we can maybe read that and say, that doesn't really apply to me. Maybe, obviously you're not working full time yet. Maybe you don't have a steady income to kind of practice this type of generosity. But I think we all, no matter what stage of life that we're in, can be tempted to store up for ourselves rather than looking outward to see what are the needs outside of myself. And it might not even look like kind of storing up tangible items. It could just be, this kind of emotional hoarding that we can have, right? Where we just want to take from everybody else and kind of store it up for ourselves. Because maybe we're insecure about how we look. Maybe we're insecure about how successful or popular we are. And so in any stage of life, we have this temptation that we'll just take and continue to take and take and take. And Jesus says that the life of a follower of Jesus, the life that God has come to preach the gospel, the kingdom life is one that gives out freely, that holds loosely to the things that they have. Because what we have is all God's anyway. And at the end of this life, it all is going to go away. I was taking a tour one time on the river down in Boca, and it was kind of a sightseeing tour, and they were telling us about all the different mansions on each side and the homeowners, and there was one particular one that was this massive one right on the corner lot, and the tour guide said, the owner of this house has no family, no kids, and so he's actually written it in his will that he's going to give the house to his dogs. And I thought, man, that is ridiculous. That's so crazy. But then it kind of dawned on me, I'm like, that's so sad. That here this guy that has everything, probably from the outside looking in, we would say he checks all those boxes. He's got exactly what he's ever wanted. And yet at the end of it, his house, his things, his cars are going to end up nowhere. They've been written in a will to some, to a husky and to a pit bull, right? That nothing that he has is going to be long lasting, that he's going to die away, and everything that he has is going to go with him. And so as we think about this in our own lives, maybe this is an opportunity for you to think about what you have and what God has blessed you with, and how can you be generous with that with others. Maybe it's a friend that's in need. Maybe it's, this just kind of general sense of I want to be generous with what I have to those around me. I want to be generous with my time, with my money, with the things that God has blessed me with, because ultimately those things don't matter. And I want to set my eyes on the things of heaven, because those are the things that ultimately matter. And so I hope that as you continue to try to live out not only the teachings of Jesus in the scriptures, but particularly this Sermon on the Mount passage, I hope that it would encourage you and challenge you to consider the posture of your heart. Is it a generous one, or is it a needy one? Do you give freely, or do you continue to take selfishly? And I hope that you would be encouraged to give out and to give generously, because ultimately that is what matters most. Thanks so much, and God bless.